reading from Acts chapter 25, verses 13 to 21. A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, "There's a man here whom Felix left as a prisoner. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned. I told them it is not the Roman custom to hand over anyone before they have faced their accusers and have had an opportunity to defend themselves against the charge. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered the man to be brought in. When his accusers got up to speak, they didn't charge him with any of the crimes I'd expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus, whom Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he'd be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. But when Paul made his appeal to be held over for the emperor's decision, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar." We left Paul in chapter 23 in Jerusalem, causing chaos as he defied the Sadducees and the Pharisees, ending with the commander fearing for Paul's life and taking him out. Paul was then sent to Caesarea and faced the Roman governor there called Felix, and he ordered Paul to be kept prisoner as, I suppose, a favour to the Jews. Then, after 2 years, so remember he's been kept prisoner there for 2 years, Felix was replaced by another chap called Festus as Roman governor. Festus, again as a favour to the Jews, wants to send Paul to Jerusalem, but Paul blocks this. He knows he's not going to get a fair trial in Jerusalem, so repeating his right to be tried as a Roman. So Festus holds Paul and King Agrippa. King Agrippa is a young king of the Jewish people, descendant of Herod. Well, King Agrippa arrives to pay his respects to this new Roman government, to maybe try and win a bit of favour with the Roman government, because, Agrippa the king is really a stooge of the Roman governor. And as they're there, King Agrippa stays a few days, so you can imagine the scene, having coffee and have a chat about the case. Because, Festus, he's the Roman governor, he wants more information, a bit more accuracy perhaps, to put in his report that he will send with Paul to the Roman emperor. Now Festus, to give him his due, he identifies it as a religious debate. And he recognises that he doesn't have the expertise or the knowledge to make the right decisions. And isn't that so true today? The lack of spiritual knowledge about Christianity in our world today. Or perhaps the feeling that spiritual matters are irrelevant. People would much rather talk about the football or the weather. And we have to recognise that. And actually all we can do is to be patient and to pray for such people and be persistent in our conversation with them. But then there's actually another side to this which is interesting, isn't there? If you'll notice, down in verse 19, it says they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus, who Paul claimed was alive. We've got here two non-religious people talking about Jesus and about the resurrection. Two secular political leaders discussing Jesus. Who knows how or where they picked that up from? But at some point, the seeds have been sown, quite probably through Paul's proclamation of the gospel in his trials. And to Paul's eyes at that time, that may have seemed like it had no effect. But these two, the Roman governor, King Agrippa, had obviously picked up something. Seeds have been sown. And so those conversations that we have about Jesus, as much as on the one hand they may appear as if they've led nowhere, who knows where they've led? You remember Jesus' parable about the sower and the seed. We sow the seed, we don't know where it's going to land or what the effects are going to be. But the other thing to notice, though, is just how central the resurrection of Jesus was to Paul's teaching. How central it was to his life. That they've picked up on that. Again, I wonder if it's the resurrection of Jesus we focus on when we're talking about Jesus. Because that is central and key to the Christian faith. Maybe you want to talk about, well, all that God can do for you, or how you will have a fulfilled life if you know the Lord Jesus. And that's true. Of course it is. But for Paul, the resurrection of the Lord Jesus was central to his life, his ministry, and his teaching. Is it to ours? So as Paul sets off for Rome, as he will do at the end of the reading, we see about having patience about our culture today. Yes, people do see spiritual matters, Christianity, as irrelevant. And that just requires patience. And secondly, our conversations. We don't know where they will lead. Those of us who are called to preach or to teach the Bible, home group leaders, house group leader, prayer group leader, you don't know where it is going to lead. And then, is the resurrection of the Lord Jesus central to your life, to your ministry, to your teaching? Because it certainly was to Paul.